Good morning, everybody. It's Jeff Goldberg for the Sales Pro Network. It is Friday, April 7th, 10 a.m. here on the East Coast. I am a sales coach and trainer. I work with both individuals and organizations internationally to help them get measurable and sustainable sales improvements. And I founded the Sales Pro Network as a place to elevate the profession of sales, where salespeople can come and hang out, network with each other, ask questions, get great advice. And if you've been with us at all before, you know every Friday at 10 a.m., we either do a live training or a live interview with somebody who can add value to the profession of sales. Before I introduce today's guest, who I'm very excited about, if you're watching us live, please say hello in the comments. If you're watching us live on Facebook and have not, boy, if I could talk, I'd be a professional speaker. If you've not connected your Facebook account to StreamYard, it's not going to say your name, so please put your name in there. If you're watching us on the replay, please put replay in the comments. And finally, if you have any questions for our guest, which I expect you will today, please put them in the comments and I'll make sure that she gets them. And with that, it's my pleasure to introduce Wendy Weiss. Wendy is the president of Salesology. She is the author of several books, including The Sales Winner's Handbook. And I've heard of her for years and years. That's why I'm so excited. Wendy Weiss is known as the queen of cold calling. Wendy, good morning. It's so nice to meet you.
Well, good morning. I'm so happy to be here with you today, Jeff.
I really am excited because I've been in the business about 20 years and I did hear about you from day one. So before I get to the million questions I have for you about prospecting and cold calling and things like that, why don't you give us the 2-minute version of what your background is and what brought you up to this point?
Absolutely. I'll begin by saying I was never supposed to be a sales trainer. I was actually supposed to be a ballerina. And my first career was I danced with Pittsburgh Ballet Theater, and then I danced with the Cincinnati Ballet. And as you may know, ballet is one of the most difficult and exacting art forms. And during those years, in between my dance jobs, as many artists often do, I needed a day job. And I got a job one time with a telemarketing agency that did business development. And lucky for me, they taught me this skill set. It was transformational because a few years later, I started my own company. And so today, my company, Salesology, we work with business owners, with sales teams that are just sick of the boom and the bust, never quite knowing where that next sale is coming from. And we help them build a pipeline of opportunities, appointments faster, more easily, and certainly more profitably.
Love that. And I'll be giving Wendy's contact information at the end, but it's salesology.com if you want to find out more about Wendy.
Go Salesology.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
Go Salesology.com.
Go Salesology.com. That's right. Got it. Thank you for the correction. Good morning, Lisa Linker. Good morning, Jason Collins. It's a pleasure to see you both here today. So, Wendy, you've been quoted as saying that everything that you've learned in life and business, you learned in ballet class. Why was ballet class such a great teacher?
Oh, my goodness. Ballet teaches you how to work towards a goal. It teaches you to work independently. It teaches you to work on a team. And it teaches you how to keep going, even if it's difficult. And I've based I have a 3-step Salesology 3-step prospecting model, which is based on what I learned in ballet class. And if you'd like, Jeff, I can go into that right now.
I would love that.
Okay.
I suspect everybody else would too.
Okay, these are the 3 steps of the Salesology prospecting model, what I learned in ballet class. First of all, if you're a dancer and you have a performance coming up, you don't just run out on stage and start dancing. You have to warm up, because if you don't warm up, you risk a career-ending injury. Elite athletes do exactly the same thing. They don't just run out on the field and start playing the game. They warm up so that they don't have a career-ending injury. There are things that you need to have in place if you manage a team, or if you are a salesperson and your company doesn't have this in place for you, you have to put it in place for yourself. There are things that you need to have in place so that you don't hurt yourself and you don't hurt your bottom line. Step 1, warm up. Step 2, Anna Pavlova was one of the great Russian ballerinas of the late 19th and early 20th century. She danced with the Imperial Russian Ballet, Ballet Diaghilev. She was the first ballerina to tour the world with her own company. But here's the thing. Anna Pavlova trained for 8 years at the Imperial Russian Ballet School. And if she had not done that, she would never have done any of the things that she did in her life. Anna Pavlova learned her craft. And just like Anna Pavlova, salespeople need to learn their craft. And the good news is it will not take you 8 years to do so. You can learn to be effective, efficient at prospecting and setting up qualified appointments in a matter of weeks. But you need Jeff, I'm on a mission. I have a mission to stamp out the myth of the born salesperson. There's this myth that people are just born knowing what to do and knowing what to say. That is a myth. It is not true. I am not a born salesperson. I'm a lucky person because when I got that day job all those years ago, they taught me this skill set. It was transformational. It enabled me to build a business. So step 1, warm up. Step 2, warm up so you don't hurt yourself and you don't hurt your bottom line. Step 2, rehearse. Learn your craft, practice your craft. That's what successful people do. Step 3, after you have warmed up, after you have rehearsed, then and only then is it time to perform. And the problem is most people just skip to the performance, which is why it doesn't work so well. But if you have warmed up, you are prepared. If you have rehearsed, you have automatic muscle memory. That's what enables you to execute. So the 3 steps of the Salesology prospecting model are warm up so that you don't hurt yourself, you don't hurt your bottom line. 2, rehearse, learn your craft, practice your craft. 3, then and only then is it time to perform, to execute.
I love all of that, especially the rehearse part. Well, I certainly am not a ballet dancer. In the days of disco, that's how old I am. I used to dance competitively with a partner, and she used to say the same thing all the time, which was, you don't rehearse on the dance floor. You rehearse in the studio. Then you can go out and perform. And absolutely right. So brilliant stuff. Why do you think so many salespeople don't invest in themselves? They don't take the time to learn. Look, it is a skill like any other, and it can be learned 100%. I think there are certain traits and qualities that some people are born with that make them more likely to succeed in sales, but anybody can. It's not rocket science. So why do you think so many salespeople don't invest in themselves and don't learn their craft?
I think that's a really interesting question. To me, part of the answer is all of the stupid things that people say about this topic, about not only cold calling, but sales in general. There is that myth of the born salesperson. It's very pervasive. A lot of people believe it. And you might have been born with a whole lot of talent for sales, or maybe you hired somebody that's born with a lot of talent for sales. That in and of itself is not enough to make anyone successful. Think about how many talented athletes there are in the world that have never played pro sports or made it to the Olympics.
Or musicians.
Or musicians. Or dancers. If you, somebody asked me this the other day about process. And, if you go to ballet class every day, 5 or 6 days a week, because that's what we do when we're dancing, and you listen to what the teacher says, and you try to do your very best, you do what the teacher says, and you do that for 7, 8 years, because it does take a long time to train a ballet dancer. But you know what? If you do that, you're going to be a ballet dancer. If you do not do that, you're not going to be a ballet dancer. It's really that simple. And so talent alone is not enough to make anyone successful, no matter how talented they are.
So many people just don't want to put in the hard work that it takes to be successful.
Yeah, and because so many people say really dumb things about this topic, the myth of the born salesperson. It's about going through the nose and the hang-ups till somebody says yes to you. I mean, who in their right mind wants to do that in the first place? managers that say, "Oh, well, it's a necessary evil." I tell them all it's a necessary evil. Now go prospect. That it's a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. Let's say good morning to some other people. Good morning, Brian Keith McNeil, the sales confidence coach. Good morning, Bruce Casterman. Somebody says, good morning, Jeff and Wendy. It's a Facebook user. Good morning to you too. Please put your name in. Ellen Lefkowitz says role play, always helpful. Absolutely. And good morning to Don Levine. Somebody is saying, let's see. I've always wanted to call more people, but they don't seem to be as receptive. I don't even have an office phone. Well, that's a statement more than a question, but okay. If you want to call more people, how about picking up the phone, whether it's an office phone or a cell phone or any other? But let's ask Wendy, what's the difference between an amateur and a professional?
That's such an interesting question. Professionals get it done. Amateurs have a lot of excuses. And I look at my background as a dancer. We go to class, we go to rehearsal. At a certain point, 8:00 on a Friday night, that curtain's going up. You've got to get out there and dance. And if you don't dance well, that's on you. And I think that there's a certain attitude that people bring that they're going to get it done. And yes, salespeople need help. Managers need to get them trained. But at the end of the day, it's on that salesperson to perform. And somebody that is an amateur is, I'll tell you a quick ballet story that I think will explain it. When I was a teenager, when I was training, I was going through a bunch of personal teenage angst, and I stopped going to class. Now, ballet dancers take class every day. You do not miss class. And so I'd been gone for maybe a few months, and then I showed up again, and my teacher said, well, where have you been? And I started telling her all these terrible things that were happening in my life. And she said, that's no excuse. You should have been taking class. And she was very hard on me. And the thing is, she was right, because not taking class, which was like my love and my passion, dancing, it just made me feel worse. Mm. So do what you need to do.
Yeah, I love what you said about excuses. In my auto signature on an email, I have 3 quotes, and one of them is salespeople either have excuses or close business. Which one do you choose? It's one or the other. So what would you say is the number one activity that business owners can do to increase their sales?
Okay. If the business owner is selling, or if this is a question for salespeople, the bottom line is you need to talk to more prospects. We need to talk to other human beings that might become clients or customers. And that's, people spend a lot of time. I've been invited to be interviewed on Bryn Tillman's podcast.
Love her.
And she's a LinkedIn expert. And so when we scheduled it, the email I got said that something like, the number one question I'm going to ask you is, what does social selling mean to you? And I thought about that. And what the number one thing that social selling means to me is it enables you to have more conversations. It's not about just posting stuff and putting out content and liking things. It's about enabling conversations with the right people so that you can sell more stuff.
Yeah, exactly right. First of all, I love Bryn Tillman. Please say hello to her for me. I adore her, and she's brilliant at what she does. And I'm guessing that, like me, you get lots of questions from your clients about how do I increase sales, and 99% of the time the answer is tell your lazy ass salespeople to get more appointments. It's not rocket science. To a certain extent, sales is a numbers game. If you speak to 2 people, you can only close 2 at best. But if you speak to 100, well, you've got a chance of closing enough of them to hit your quota, achieve your goals, or exceed them. Here's another question that I get all the time, and I'm guessing you probably get it too, given that you are the queen of this. I get it all the time. Does cold calling work?
Yes.
It's as simple as that, right?
It's really as simple as that. Now, cold calling does not work the way it did 20 years ago or 10 years ago or even, 4 or 5 years ago. But it absolutely still works. And Jeff, you and I, we know we have clients that are scheduling appointments all day long just by cold calling.
Yeah, I'm constantly stunned by people who argue with me that it doesn't work. It's okay. So tell that to the 5 people that got appointments yesterday because I trained them on how to do it. And at the end of the day, they got on the phones, they made appointments. It's silly. It doesn't work if you don't do it. And it doesn't work if you don't do it well, but it certainly works. So if it works, as you and I agree it does, why don't salespeople do it? Or why don't more salespeople do it?
One tip for all of our listeners, our audience today, if your competition tells you it doesn't work, agree with them. But, I think, again, people say so many dumb things about this, and it has been so demonized that why would anybody want to do this thing that is talked about like it's torture? And you and I, Jeff, were having a conversation before we started this broadcast about the whole I love to cold call, I hate to cold call conversation. And, and that conversation goes like this. Everybody hates cold calling, except there's a handful of people that love it. And to me, that's really kind of silly, because the opposite of hating it is not that you now love it. I'm not here to tell anybody they should love to cold call. But what I would encourage you to do is to get to neutral. What we want to do is take all the emotion out of it. It is not an emotional experience. It is a business process by which you acquire new clients. That's what it is. And nobody has a nervous breakdown when they hit send on an email. Oh, they might delete my email. Well, what am I going to do? No, that doesn't happen. Same thing. It's just a business process.
Yeah. Pick up the phone and call. What's the worst that happens? The worst that happens is they could swear at you, they could yell at you, they could hang up on you. Make the next call.
Yeah. I will interject, and I've been doing this for about 25 years. Nobody's ever died from cold calling. Not one.
I still consider it the most cost-effective and time-efficient way to fill up your calendar with appointments if you do it consistently and well. So
yes.
Let's talk about that. People have different opinions on this, but how many appointment-making calls should a sales rep be making or a BDR be making in any given day? Is there a right number?
I'm not sure that there is a right number. It certainly depends on what their job description is and where they are in their career. If someone is brand new, it's the 80-20 rule. They should be spending 80% of their time looking for new business if they don't have a pipeline. And then at a certain point, the equation's going to flip 3-4 months if they've been consistently prospecting. I'm a big believer in using the right equipment. And today, part of that equipment is the right prospecting software, not a CRM. CRMs are generally very unwieldy for telephone prospecting, and you need to have a dialer. We have someone in our program right now who's doing about 130 dials a day. She's using a dialer. She's not doing that manually. And she is a business development person. She sets appointments for the owner of the company. She sets 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 appointments a week. Easily. She wouldn't be doing that if she wasn't using the right equipment.
So when you say prospecting software, are you specifically talking about a predictive dialer, or is there something else that people should be using when they're cold calling?
Well, the software that I recommend to clients and that that we use is made by Contact Science. Shout out to Bob Howard of Contact Science. And that software, even without the dialer, speeds up the process. They've done benchmark studies against many of the standard CRMs, and to dial the phone 10 times using most of the standard CRMs that people use takes about an hour. To dial the phone 10 times using Contact Science once you know how to use it, takes about 20 minutes. And then if you add the dialer on top of that, it's even faster. So you can simply, that is how Elena is executing 120, 150 dials a day just by using contact science and the dialer.
Yes, I know Bobby's a great guy. And do you have any idea of, she's making 120 dials a day. Do you know how often she gets through to the right person?
She's getting through, let me think, her conversion, she's calling very high level people. So her conversion is about 5% of the dials into conversations. And out of that, she schedules 20 to 25% of those conversations turn into appointments. So she's doing pretty well.
Yeah. I'll take that 20 to 25% conversion rate all day long. That's a great number.
Yeah.
I think what you said was so important. You know, I think often people have an unrealistic expectation of what the numbers should be. So here's somebody who's making 120 dials, even though she's not making them physically, making 120 dials a day, but setting 4 to 8 appointments a week. That's 1 a day to 1.25 a day. Maybe that's not a lot, but you know, I think people often think I got to make 20 appointments a day or 15 appointments a day. It depends on what you're selling and who you're selling it to. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. It depends on the hardest part of this these days is just reaching people, which is why it's important to use all the tools that are available to you, like voicemail, like email, texting, if it's appropriate in your market, social media, just use everything.
We're definitely going to talk about those things later on. But Ellen Lefkowitz is asking, I can't but feel that this method sounds more like telemarketing versus sales calls. My sales calls are very different and more lengthy, just what I'm hearing. I'm going to let Wendy answer this, Ellen, but there's a difference between a sales call and an appointment making call. Wendy, why don't you give her your opinion?
Yeah, I think people often conflate this, and that prospecting is not the same thing as selling.
You're selling the appointment, but you're not selling the product or service.
Exactly. Two completely different skill sets. And my definition of the word appointment is that the prospect agrees to have an in-depth conversation with you about whatever it is you are selling. And where that happens, because I know people sometimes get confused about this, you know, before COVID, maybe you always got in your car and you went to see them. Maybe you don't do that now. Maybe you do a Zoom call. Maybe everything happens over the telephone. But the bottom line is a prospect has to agree to talk to you. And if they don't agree to talk to you, you struggle. So the way I think about this is it's like dating. If you want to go on a date with someone, you've got to ask them. And if and when they say yes, then you go on the date. Well, prospecting is like asking for the date. Selling is like going on the date, two completely different skill sets.
I've said the same thing many times. Selling and dating are very similar. You know, does she like me? Does she like me enough to go out with me? Does she like me enough to go out with me again? Does she like me enough to close the deal? It's very similar. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And speaking of women, you wrote a book called Cold Calling for Women. Is there a difference between men and women when it comes to cold calling?
That's such an interesting question. Cold Calling for Women was my first book. It came out in 2000. Had a big pink phone on the cover. And when I wrote the book, it was my first book, and I did not have it in my head to write a book that said men do this and women do that. But rather, I was writing about how to do this thing that people struggled with. And my metaphor is dance. And as I was writing it, I was giving chapters to colleagues for like peer review and advice. And one of my colleagues said to me, no guy's ever going to read this book. Because at the time, at 2000, in most of the sales books in the 90s, the metaphors were all about sports and all the pronouns were masculine. So I was writing a book where all the pronouns were feminine, and it was about how ballet dancing is the metaphor for prospecting. And when he said that to me, I thought to myself, you know what? Women need this information and they need to have it in a way that is accessible something that's going to resonate with them. And if men don't want to hear about ballet, that's okay, because I know it really resonates with women, and that's my metaphor. So I just flipped a switch in my brain and I said, I'm writing a book for women to help them grow their businesses. That is the story of cold calling for women.
It's brilliant. Love it. So many people today are relying on email and texting and everything other than the telephone. Why is the telephone still an important component of the sales process?
That's such a great question, because, and there are so many reasons. I'll start with a study that was done at the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. And they studied written communication and spoken communication. So written communication is an email. It could be a letter, it could be a text, maybe a social media post. Spoken communication was when you're face-to-face with someone, you're in the same room, maybe a Zoom call or video call, on the telephone, or even a voicemail. And they found two things. First of all, if people hear you talk, even if it's on a voicemail, they think you're smarter. Second, they're more likely to take action on whatever it is you're talking about. So the telephone, just because of that, is very, very powerful. Add to that, so many people think that the telephone is dead. Nobody answers their phone. Cold calling doesn't work. Your competitors are very likely not calling the prospects that you want to talk to. Call them. 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, you get someone on the phone, they'd say, do you know how many salespeople called me today? You will not hear that. No one will say that to you because no one is calling them. Call up your prospect. In addition, what we have found both internally and with our clients, because we teach a method that is a combination of you leave a voicemail and you send an email. And typically what we found is that most of the responses do come by email. You get more emails than callbacks. But if you stop leaving the voicemail, the response rate goes down.
I can't tell you how much I love what you were saying about people think it doesn't work. I suggest do what the other guy isn't doing or the other gal isn't doing, because that way you're going to stand out. I was once working with a company in San Francisco, and I got a call from a consultant who was working with them. He said, Jeff, these people don't cold call at all. They don't believe in it. I want you to come in and train them how to cold call. I'm like, well, I'm working on an uphill battle, but okay. So I fly out to San Francisco. I do an entire day of training with them on how to cold call. We develop scripts and all that stuff. And the next morning, we're going to get them on the phones, but all day long during the training. This isn't going to work. We don't like what you're telling us. Nobody picks up the phone. Everybody's voicemail is completely full. You can't even leave it. I don't know why we're wasting our time. So it was a tough day of training. And then the next morning they got on the phone and made appointments. It's you either have excuses or closed business. Pick one. But you should always do what the other person isn't. It's like direct mail. Almost nobody uses direct mail anymore. It's a great way to stand out.
Yeah, everyone's emailing, so send a letter.
Yeah, same thing with thank you notes. I'm not asking your age, but you're probably closer to me than we are to 20-year-olds. When I was young, everybody sent handwritten thank you notes. Nobody does anymore. It's a great way to stand out. You want to do something to make you memorable. So pick up the phone, send something, direct mail, a thank you note that's handwritten. It's an easy way to set yourself apart from every other salesperson that's not doing the things that they could be doing. One of the things you've said is a little perplexing, and I may just be misunderstanding it. You've said that consultative selling does not work for prospecting. I'm not sure if you mean selling and prospecting are two different things, but why don't you think consultative selling works for prospecting?
Because you can't consult with someone that won't talk to you. It's really very simple. So if we think of the appointment, I mean, because I get emails like this all the time, or questions when I do sessions, well, Wendy, I'm trying to consult and they want to engage. And, step one is getting them to say, yes, I want to talk to you. Then you can consult. But if you start from, I want to consult with you, that's hard because they may not want to consult back, So if we look at the appointment as the prospect agrees to have an in-depth conversation with you, get that agreement, then consult.
So salespeople are trying to skip that step.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Okay.
And one of the things that I see a lot, we talked about the difference between prospecting and selling, but unfortunately, this is often taught as if it's exactly the same, that it's the same skill set. Prospecting is not the same. It's a completely different skill set.
Yeah. I'm not looking to do a consultative sell when I'm prospecting. My objective is get on the phone, get the appointment, get off the phone, make the next call, or get on the phone, don't get the appointment and get off the phone and make the next call. But you got to pound out a bunch of them because like this person who's doing 120 dials a day, and you're not going to speak to everybody. And you said it earlier, it's harder and harder these days. 20 years ago it was much easier to get through to people. I mean, I'm old enough. I remember before voicemail was around. If you're not pounding out the numbers, you're going to have a tough time. One of the things that we have to do when we're selling is have a great value proposition. What's the secret to creating a great value proposition?
That's the big question, isn't it, Jeff? Great question. The question that you need to ask yourself is, what is the problem that your clients have that you can help them with, and how do they talk about it? Not how do you talk about it, how do they talk about it? And that's the hardest thing of all, because most salespeople want to talk about what they do, and nobody really cares what you do. They care how they're going to be better off when you finish doing whatever it is. So one of the exercises that we often have our clients do is interview their clients, and we have them ask 4 questions. The first question is, what was going on before you came to us? Second question, how did you feel about that? Third question, what's going on now that you're working with us? How do you feel about that? And what's interesting is it's really hard to get people to ask question number 2 and question number 4. But those are the important questions.
Because they don't want to hear the answers?
Maybe they don't think it's important. I'm not sure. Sometimes they'll say, what do you think about that? That's not the right question. How do you feel about it?
Brilliant. Because
what you're looking for when you get a prospect on the phone is not another sales guy called me, and even though I said you don't hear that very much, but you want that prospect to feel like, this guy really gets me. That Jeff, he gets me. He understands what I'm going through. And that you do that by using emotional language, not about we do this and we do that.
I love that. It's all about them instead of us. And so many times we make it about us instead of them.
Yeah.
Got it. That's great. One of the things that many people find is a real chore is putting together a list of who to call. Any advice on how to build a better list?
Get a great data company. We partner with Mountaintop Data. They're a great data company. The other part of this, I was just talking to somebody about this yesterday. Sometimes companies will have their salespeople build the lists. What an incredible waste of a salesperson's time. Your marketing department needs to do that. And if you don't have a marketing department, somebody other than the salesperson should be putting that together. But you start with a really clear definition of the parameters of what makes a great lead for you in your market with your offering. And those parameters need to be concrete, like what's the size of the company, revenue, employee count, is it a specific industry or vertical market? What's the title of the person that's going to make the decision? or the people, if there are multiple people involved, what are those titles? And what we often see when we're working with clients is I'll ask the question, describe an ideal prospect, and they'll give me all sorts of subjective criteria, like, well, they should understand the value that we bring. And I would love to be the list broker for that list. So when you start with those objective criteria, then it is not hard to get a list. When you start with, they should understand the value we bring, where are you going to find these people?
So you have to develop an ideal client profile so you know exactly what you're looking for.
Absolutely. That is where we always start. And you want that profile to, you can have multiple profiles, but you want it to be very narrowly focused. Not, well, they need to have 10 to 10,000 employees, but, maybe it's 10 to 75, or maybe it's 5,000 to 10,000, but it is not 10 to 10,000.
And $1 million to $1 billion in revenue, right?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, I get it. Something else you said, which I found interesting, and I agree, about salespeople wasting their time on things that aren't sales related. Should salespeople be setting their own appointments, or should an organization have a BDR to do that for them?
Certainly, it depends on the size of the organization. It is more time consuming these days to set appointments than it used to be. So if you've got someone that is you've got a salesperson on your team, they are producing, they are closing, by all means, find somebody else to set up appointments for them. One of the things that I see a lot, actually, I'd be curious to know your thoughts on this, Jeff, but when companies hire new salespeople, often what they do is they teach that new salesperson every last thing that salesperson needs to know about whatever it is they're selling. And that could take a really long time. And then they say, go sell. And then if they've made a bad hire and that person is not bringing in business, it hurts the bottom line. It's frustrating. And I read a study that said 83% of newly hired salespeople were gone in 3 years. So a better idea is to hire that new person. Do not teach them everything they need to know about what they're selling. Teach them to set an appointment for somebody that knows what they're doing. You want them to be revenue generating quickly? Teach them to set appointments. You can do that in a matter of weeks. They can start setting appointments for you, for somebody else on your team that can run with that appointment and close business. First of all, you find out really quickly, are they going to be successful? And if they're able to set up appointments, then go ahead and teach them everything else they need to know. But they become revenue generating in a matter of months, as opposed to waiting for a year, for 2 years, for 3 years to see if they're ever going to sell anything.
Yeah, I love that. I'm torn on this one. One is, yes, I can make somebody very successful very quickly if they're just setting appointments and they're learning the business while they're doing it. The other side for me is nobody cares more about your appointment than you do personally. So if you're going to have somebody else setting appointments for you, you've got to make sure that they're compensated properly and incentivized to want to do that. Because otherwise, the last thing you want to do, and I've been in many situations over my years in sales, I've been selling for 48 years, where somebody else is setting the appointments, I get out there and they don't hold up. And I know that I would not let that happen. Now, I'm not talking about somebody had to break the appointment at the last minute. You get there and it's like, who are you and what are you doing here? Well, didn't you talk to my guy the other day? So yeah, I'm torn on that one because nobody cares more about my appointments than I do. And I've tried, I don't know about your experience with outside telemarketing companies that will set appointments for you. I've had incredibly poor results. I've only met a couple of companies that really do it well, and they tend to be very expensive. Do you know of outside telemarketing companies that set appointments for people that actually do a good job?
I cannot make a recommendation at this time. I have, right now I have one business development person. I typically have two, and, they work for Salesology. It's not outsourced. But if I had a business development person, if I was going on an appointment and they had no idea who I was or why I was there, and that happened a lot. I mean, that's one of two things. It's either a process problem in the scripting, the way the call's handled, the way the call's confirmed, those kind of things, or that business development person is just not cutting it.
Yeah. Yeah. You just mentioned something else that I was going to ask you about. So you talked about scripting. So obviously you believe in scripts, yes?
Absolutely.
So many salespeople, I don't want to use a script. I'm good. I'm a salesperson. I'm good on my feet. I could not disagree more. I agree with you. You got to have a script. Why is a script so important?
Okay. Well, I'm going to let everybody in on a little secret. Even the people that say, I don't want to use this script. Everyone uses scripts. And this is what I mean. You probably have an elevator speech. You probably have a way that you routinely introduce yourself on a prospecting call. If you're networking, if you go to a conference, maybe you use it on social media, you have an elevator speech. You probably have certain questions that you hear all the time. And you kind of have a standard answer. They ask you this question, you've got the standard answer. Or maybe there's certain objections you hear all the time and you kind of have a standard answer. Now, none of these things may be written down, but if you're pretty much saying the same thing every single time, those are scripts. So the question is not, should you use a script? Because everyone uses scripts. The right question is, what happens when you use your script? I would argue that if you're not setting up enough qualified appointments, or your sales team is not setting up enough qualified appointments, if prospects won't engage, like inbound leads, and they won't engage with you, or they interrupt you, say, I'm not interested, and hang up, your script doesn't work. Because when you have a good script and you deliver it well, prospects will listen to what you say, and then they will open up their calendars and they will book an appointment. And they will return phone calls, and they will respond to email.
Yeah, I think one of the keys, though, is it's got to be a script. It just can't sound like a script. And the example I use all the time is, you and I both live in New York. I love Broadway, and I love going to shows. And I've seen Phantom of the Opera 6 times. It's not my favorite, but it's one of my favorites. It's the same show every time. Different actors, but they're saying the same exact words in the same ways, in the same time. They're making the same gestures, singing the same songs. But it seems like they're making it up in front of you, because that's the essence of a great script, a great actor at least, and a great salesperson. It's a script, but it doesn't sound like it. To me, I believe in using scripts when you're cold calling, because if you say the same things every time, you'll get the same responses every time. And that way you can be prepared for them, yes?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll share with everyone a tip about how to write a script. You know, we have all been trained in school to write in a certain way. Capital letter at the beginning, period at the end. Human beings don't talk like that. So 2 things. Think about what you want to say, call up your voicemail, record yourself talking, then write down what you said, just the way you said it. Don't make it perfect grammatical English, because that's not how people talk.
Exactly.
And when you write it down, leave out all the punctuation. I was just working with a client yesterday, and he had his script, and he read it the way we've all been taught in school. He'd start at the beginning of the sentence, and he'd come to the period, and he'd stop. And then he'd start the next sentence, and he'd come to the period, and he'd stop. And then he'd start the next sentence, and he'd come to the period, and he'd stop. He sounded like he was reading. So I made him take out all the punctuation and just practice his script that way. And then he sounded like a human being talking.
Yeah, I love talking to you, because I hear myself in so many of the things you say. When I help people develop scripts, I often tell them, you got to go back and look this over, because you wrote the way you write. What I want you to do is write the way you speak. For example, using contractions. Nobody in English says, I would like to come by and see you. It's, I'd like to. And that makes you into a human being, and it sounds unscripted. Brilliant. I'm looking at the clock, and I've got 75 more questions, but there's a couple I want to make sure that we get to. What about voicemail? You mentioned it before. Should we leave them? Should we not leave them? And if we do, what type of messages actually get a response?
Well, first of all, you absolutely should leave voicemail. It's hard to get people on the phone. You need a mechanism to get prospects to respond. And voicemail is one of those mechanisms. Email is another. Texting is another, if it's appropriate in your market. Social media is another. The research shows it typically takes 8 to 12 touches to get somebody to respond. So if they don't know that you're trying to reach them, they're not going to respond. So leave a voicemail. And we typically do a voicemail campaign, which is 4 voicemails and 4 emails. So that's 8 touches. That's where we start. We track it because then you know if it works. You might need to add more voicemails and emails or something else. But that's just a starting point. And this is the same as your script for when you get somebody on the phone. What's the problem that they have that you can help them with? How do they talk about it? And the goal when you have your prospect on the phone is to set the appointment. The goal, if you're going to leave a voicemail, is to get them to respond, to either call you back or respond to that email that you also send them. Even if they say go away, great. Now you know what to do. You can call somebody else that's going to say yes.
I don't know if do you know Jason Bay?
Yes.
Brilliant young man. His advice, and I'd like to know how you feel about this, is don't even expect to get a response to a voicemail. He leaves a voicemail after sending an email, which refers to the emails. It's almost, hey, Wendy, it's Jeff Goldberg. I don't expect you to call me back. I know how busy you are, but I sent you an email yesterday at 12:05 p.m. The subject line was increasing sales and blah, blah, blah. How do you feel about that? Or do you actually expect a return call from a voicemail?
That's an interesting question. I actually remove expectation. If you're following a process and you track it, then you know what to expect. And I don't have my numbers in front of me right now. I wrote an article a while ago about why you should leave voicemail. And the Zoom info number was 4.8%. That was the response average across industries, 4.8% response rate to voicemail. And if you're making a lot of calls, let's say you dial the phone 20 times a day, that's 100 times a week. 5,000 dials in a year, because 52 weeks in a year, I'm giving you 2 weeks for vacation. 50 times 100, 5,000 dials in a year. You would never notice that. You would say nobody calls me back, but I'm pulling out my phone right now and I'll do the math because I don't have it in front of me. So we have 5,000 dials times, what did I say?
4.8%?
Yeah. 240 return phone calls, actually. I think that's high. I may have done the math wrong, but that's a lot of phone calls. If 1% of them called you back, it'd be about 50. That's a lot. That's why you should leave a voicemail.
Yeah. I always say, if you don't leave a voicemail, they can't call you back.
True.
What do you have to lose? You're already invested the time. It's another 30 seconds to leave a message.
Not if you're using a dialer. A dialer will drop a recorded message.
Oh, got it. Okay. So you're not even leaving the message yourself.
No.
But you record the message, right?
You record the message, and you record the message the time of day that you have the most energy and you feel the best, and that's when you record the message, and that's the message you drop.
I think I've avoided getting a dialer because I personally hate getting those calls.
You don't know. It's completely seamless. Because if I were calling you using a dialer, I would say, hi, Jeff, and I'd click on the link. So it's personalized. It is seamless. There's no, you cannot tell. There's no separation between the hi, Jeff and the actual message. And it does not have that pause. I think it's the predictive dialers that have that pause.
That's
where you pick up the phone and there's a pause and then something comes on the line. That's not what we're talking about. It sounds like it's a human being leaving a message, which it is. It's you.
Yeah, it's the predictive dialer that I hate. When you answer the phone, and I always answer the phone the same way. Hi, this is Jeff. And then there's like a 2, 3, 4 second pause, and somebody comes on and says, hi, can I speak to Jeff, please? I'm like, I just said this is Jeff. You wasted my time.
Yeah.
Don't do that to me.
Yeah.
I want to get to another one that you mentioned a moment ago, because this is crucial. gatekeepers. So it's typically thought of that it's their job to keep us away and it's our job to get through them.
Can we think about that in a different way?
Please, yes.
Okay. How about it's their job to put important calls through, and that includes yours?
I like that. Now, how do we make our call important to the gate, important enough to them so that they will put us through to the person that we'd like to speak with?
Okay. There are two schools of thought on this. There is the school of thought that is, you tell the gatekeeper everything. You basically spill your guts. Why are you calling? You engage with the gatekeeper, who's then going to get you through. And then my school of thought, let's imagine that Indra Nooyi used to be the CEO of PepsiCo. She's now on the board of directors of Amazon. Indra Nooyi calling your prospect, and the gatekeeper says to her, what's this in reference to? I am willing to bet that the answer is not, well, I used to be the CEO of PepsiCo. We make Pepsi-Cola and Gatorade and Tropicana and Quaker Oats. And now I'm on the board of directors of Amazon. We started out selling books and now we sell everything. And maybe you've heard of us. I don't think that's the answer. I think the answer is, please tell Jeff it's Indra Nooyi, I'll hold. And there is this myth of the dragon lady gatekeeper that's been with the boss for 45 years. Those women don't really exist anymore. There was a time when secretary was a really great career for women. Those women they're the boss now. You are much more likely to encounter a temp than you are somebody that's been with the boss for 45 years. So the answer to what's this in reference to is as simple as, please tell Jeff it's Wendy Weiss, I'll hold. Or please tell Jeff it's Wendy Weiss, Weiss Communications, I'll hold.
I do something very similar. Just be straightforward, firm, as if you expect to get through. Not misleading, not saying, hey, it's Jeff, like I'm his best friend or something like that.
Right.
That's a great way to get creamed if you actually get somebody.
Yeah, don't say it's a personal call or anything like that. It's just, there is something, I call it boss behavior, but there is a way that people that have power behave. They give a direction, they expect it's going to be done. And it's not about being rude to gatekeepers. I always say, please tell Jeff it's Wendy Weiss. But there's a certain tone that, you expect them to do it. And lots of times the person you want to talk to isn't there. So then you ask some questions about when's a better time to reach him? What time's he in? How late's he in? Be a detective, ask some questions, call back when they tell you to, or leave a voicemail.
Or how about asking this, which I don't think anybody asks anymore. By any chance, do you handle their calendar? Just by asking that question, if they say yes, great, how do I get on? Can I schedule an appointment for next Wednesday at 10? I mean, that's a question that's gotten me appointments over and over, because why not ask? What do you have to lose?
Really?
Something else that I hear all the time, and I'm guessing you do too, people keep telling me they're getting ghosted. So how do we stop chasing prospects that seem interested in the beginning, but end up wasting our time?
Okay. So you're talking about somebody that sets an appointment and then doesn't show up for the appointment?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually, what I really mean, I'd like to hear that one too, but so somebody who you've met with and maybe you've delivered a proposal and they don't return your calls anymore, they don't return your emails anymore. You don't want to, I find salespeople tend to chase prospects over and over who have no intention of doing business with them.
Yeah. That's such an interesting question. I'm actually working with someone right now with a company that they have the first meeting, and then there's certain financial information that they have to get and to do the next step for the prospect. And sometimes the prospects send it along and sometimes they don't, and the salespeople are chasing the prospect. But here's what they're not doing. Nobody asks on their very first meeting, when they talk about that information that they need to do the next step, nobody says, when do you think you'll have a chance to get that together? So that's such a crucial piece that is missing. If you have a meeting you have an appointment with a prospect, do not hang up the phone or do not close down the Zoom call or do not leave their office until they tell you what the next step is and you have some kind of agreement to what you're doing next. Because the truth is, a prospect that will not agree to the next step is probably not a really hot prospect.
Yes, if they were interested, they would agree. I always say, somebody gives you some of their valuable time and then agrees to give you more of their valuable time. That's somebody who's interested. Somebody who says, call me next month, call me next quarter, call me when hell freezes over. They're trying to get rid of you in the most polite way without saying, I don't want to talk to you anymore. And we should be listening for the no. Actually, we should learn to love the no. I like yes better, but no's my second favorite word in sales. Everything else sucks, like maybe and think it over and all that stuff. But I think salespeople need to get the fact that a lot of people are going to say no to you. You need enough to say yes, but some people are going to say no, and it's okay. Make it easy for them to do that instead of chasing everybody. I personally believe that most salespeople treat every prospect as if they're all equal. They're not.
No, they're not. They're not.
Well, we're so out of time. I've only got time for one more question. I've got 18 that I want are important. How about this one? I'm guessing that, like me, right about now, you start getting calls from salespeople who are saying, Wendy, what am I going to do? Summer's coming, and you can't sell during the summer. Or the same thing happens at the end of the year, like right after Thanksgiving. Jeff, I'm not going to, what am I going to do? You can't sell in between the holidays. How do you feel about that?
I have an article that I put out every July. It's called Summertime Blues. And it goes something like this. They're on vacation. I'm on vacation. Their secretary's on vacation. They're out of the office. There's a whole long list. You know what? If summer is slow for your prospects, that means they have more time to talk to you. Call them.
Yeah, and the same thing that week between Christmas and New Year's. I love calling people then. First of all, people are in holiday mode. And are some people taking time off? Some are, but there's a lot of people who are there and they're very receptive. And that whole thing about summer, everybody's on vacation. I took a vacation last year. It was 10 days. That means I still had 6 weeks that you could have reached me during the summer. And by the way, I still have my phone with me when I was on vacation in Greece and Rome.
Yeah. And if they say, I'm going on vacation, call me in 3 weeks, pencil in an appointment for after they get back.
Exactly. Great. When will you be back? Let's set an appointment for a week after that. I'm sure you'll be exhausted and you need to catch up. It's people let prospects off the hook too easily, I think.
Yes, they do.
Anyways, we are completely out of time and I have 75 more questions I'd love to discuss with you, but I'm sharing my screen right now. Could you tell people how to reach you if they're interested?
Absolutely. Please reach out to us. The website is gosalesology.com. You can also call me because I am a phone person, 866-220-4242. Emails info@gosalesology.com. And I invite you to download our 81 tools to grow your sales and your business faster, more easily, more profitably. It's a compilation of all the tools that we recommend. So if you're looking for something to support your sales or marketing efforts, you just go to that section in the book and find what you need. Everything has been vetted for you. And that link is bit.ly/JG Sales Pro. And last, but certainly not least, I invite you, please do tune into my podcast, which is Salesology Conversations with Sales Leaders, and wherever you get your podcasts.
And I'm going to put that link to that free gift, which is very nice of you to offer. I'm going to put that in the chat. In the Sales Pro Network, in the comments under this recording so that everybody can get to it. Wendy Weiss, thank you so much for generously sharing your brilliance with us. I really appreciate it. I will end this as I always do. Gang, please remember, sales is a game of making things happen. So get out there and make sales happen. Thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. And if you're celebrating Passover, Ramadan, or Easter, have a happy one of all of those. Thank you so much, Wendy Weiss. Have a great one.
Thank you. Bye.